about being creative with English. So first things first, we're going to look at some different ways that you can practice and learn English creatively. Okay. So first of all, I wanted to do a poll. I'm going to put this link into the chat, and I'd like you to think about what words you associate with creativity. So any words you can think of that you relate to it. So let me just give you the link. So yeah, just write some words that you feel are related to creativity, and we should have a word cloud in a moment. Okay, so imagination is our most popular word. Active, new, fun, mind, things, different. Okay, sing, paint, freedom. Some really nice words there. Diverse. Okay, so that's interesting. So let's move on then. Some really good words there. So my next question is, how creative are you? So, so if we have a scale of 1, not creative, to 11, super creative, how creative do you think you are? So do you want to just write a number in the chat? Okay, we've got 6, 5, 8, 7, 7 or 8. No one wants to say 11. 9. Okay, good. So you're all quite confident and quite being creative. Okay, Carla's 6. Okay, so look, really that was a trick question, because if you think about it, creativity is, there is no like limit to your creativity. Creativity is just thinking and playing and having fun. So you might not be amazing at drawing a beautiful picture, but your creativity is absolutely limitless. So everyone should feel like their creativity levels are, I don't know, infinite. So we're going to have a look at some ways that we can actually apply your creativity now that we know it's limitless to your English. So I have a question here. What's your most creative idea for practicing English? So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and together just try to share any ideas that you have. There is no wrong answers, so it can be things that you have done, or it can be things that you can imagine, but any ideas? Okay, so I came and listened to some of your conversations, and you had some really good ideas. So here they are here. So lots of apps, watching movies, watching the news, listening to the radio. This one I really like, reading about a topic that we're interested in, also using Post-its all over the house. So that was some really good ideas. So we're going to have a look at some other ideas that I have been thinking about recently. First of all, obviously using art can be a really good way of practicing English. So the first thing I thought of was drawing or doodling. So for example, that might be making a mind map like this. So obviously we have 2 types of mind map here. One of them is by someone who is very, very artistic, and they're adding lots of words and ideas and drawing the pictures alongside it. But of course, not everybody is really good at drawing. So even something like this can be a really good thing to do. The reason is that drawing helps you to remember words particularly, but you could also use it with grammar or with anything that you're learning. So just having the connection between something visual and the language that you want to practice is a really good way of doing it. Another thing might be something around movement. So there is a very specific type of language learning which uses movement to help people remember language. So this can be helpful to connect your audio with your visual and kinesthetic. So an example of this might be, for example, maybe if you're learning a new verb, just doing the action of that verb can really help. So for example, let's say, has anyone learned a new word recently?
Listening.
Listening is a new word?
Glistening.
Oh, glistening. Oh, okay. As in like shiny?
Exactly.
Okay, so what you would need to do is to make an action to go with the word. So maybe glistening, you could do something like this. Glistening.
Okay.
So what you need to do is repeat that many, many times. Glistening, glistening. And your brain and your movement connect, and it's much easier to remember that word. So if I go like this in the future, you'll say glistening.
Okay.
So you could try something like that. And then the other thing I was thinking about is music. So I think some people mentioned listening to music, but what about singing music? Things are much more memorable when you're singing them. So I'm sure when you were a child, you remember lots of songs that you sang as a child. Well, it's the same idea. Like it helps you to remember much more easily. So same thing with like chants or rhymes, or even connecting sounds, or maybe even dancing if you want to get really radical. So these are lots of different ways that you can try and get a bit more creative with the way that you remember language. Some other ideas was using stories. So this is a really good way of putting language into context. And also you can be creative about the story that you make. So one idea I had was to write a story or draw a comic and make it into a book. So I have some links here for how to make a book. And that might be a really nice project to help you review lots of different grammar and vocabulary, maybe the language that you learned during this course. Another idea was to maybe write or illustrate a children's book. So obviously with a children's book, it has to be more simple, but in that way, you have to think about how can I simplify this language that I'm learning so that a child could understand. Another idea was to use Google Maps. So if you go into Street View in Google Maps, you can, essentially you can go on holiday to somewhere, or you can maybe revisit places that you've been to before. And in that you can maybe write a diary of your holiday, or you can even send a postcard, or write a postcard at least, about the places that you visit. And this is just a good way to get your imagination flowing a little bit, so you can see places, maybe you can be reminded about places, and that might bring back some more memories so that you can write better about it. Also you could visit a museum. There are lots and lots of virtual museum tours. I have a list here. So you can go to a museum, have a look at some different art, and maybe that can give you inspiration for writing a story, or maybe talking about the art, or sharing your experience of the museum. Okay, can everyone still see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's a bit confusing. Okay, so those are some different ways that you can use stories when you're learning English. Some other things that I thought about was maybe using poetry. So there are obviously lots of different types of poetry. So the first one I thought about was maybe this kind of simple rhyming couplets. A rhyming couplet is like a pair. So for example, roses are red, violets are blue, I can be creative and so can you. So all we're doing is rhyming the last word here. Or you could write a haiku. So a haiku is 3 lines with 17 syllables. So it's 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables again. This might be really good for you if you're practicing connected speech or pronunciation, because you really have to think about what are the syllables in each phrase. If you want to be traditional and classical, you could go for a sonnet. So here again, I have a link about how to write a sonnet. It's a bit more complicated, but I think it might be an interesting project, and hopefully it will get your brain thinking about English in a different way. And then finally, you could just write a free form poem or a nonsense poem. And here, obviously, there is no rules. You can just do what you like and let your creativity go wild. There's one very famous, well, there's lots of famous nonsense poets, but one that I really like is a man called Spike Milligan. He's a British poet, and he just writes the most wonderful, crazy poems. So I suggest that you go and have a look if that's the sort of thing that you're interested in. Okay, so we've talked a lot about art and writing and poetry, but if you don't feel connected to that in any way, there are some ways that you can get more creative with social media, for example. So you can set up a Twitter account or an Instagram account and create like an English persona. So you could think of a name and think of things that that person likes, and kind of try to be creative about that. Here is a really good website for making memes. So maybe you could make a meme a day or a meme a week, and share that on your social media. There's also an interesting website where you can write subtitles for sort of famous videos. So that might be a fun and interesting thing to do. Or you can make YouTube tutorials. Maybe if you did them after your class or at the weekend to summarize what you've learned, that might be a really good way to help you remember the language, but also teach it at the same time. And if you're really, really lucky, one of these things might go viral and you might become very, very rich. So that's another motivating factor. And finally, you can try and get more creative with your class. So obviously your class is a really good resource for you. It's 14 other people who are also interested in learning English. So try to use that. So some ideas that I had from other teachers were to make quizzes for you or your classmates. I'm sure everyone has heard about this app called Quizlet, but it's a really good one for practicing language. You could also set up a group in this app called Words with Friends, which is basically where you play Scrabble, but it's not officially Scrabble. So that might be a fun way of practicing with your classmates. Um, or you could maybe set up a book group or a series club to discuss opinions about books or series or movies, or your teacher. But any way to kind of meet and talk with your classmates might be a really good idea. And then finally, there's a really good website called flippity.net, and on that website you can make a board game, an interactive online board game. So you could make one for your classmates, or make one for your friends. I'm not sure, but using some of the things that you've learned in the class. So that's some more creative ways of engaging with your classmates. And finally, I think the important thing to remember is if you are getting a bit bored with whatever practice technique you're using. So for example, maybe you've used Duolingo for a long time and it's quite boring and you don't feel motivated to do it anymore. It's time to change. So don't continue doing something which you're not that into anymore. It's a really good idea to change your approach to learning English. And then finally, I found a really nice YouTube video about unleashing or releasing your natural creativity. So I've just put the link there. So maybe later today or tomorrow, when you're feeling like you need to think about your creativity, you could have a watch of that and see if he has any good ideas. Okay, so I've given you a lot of information. I will put this presentation onto the Edmodo page so that you can follow all the links and check some of the ideas. But for the moment, is there any questions that you have about any of this? No?
No, teacher. Thank you.
Bella, do you I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have or do you know a page where I can maybe review the listen to the same word that you can listen the same way, but it means different. I don't know, for example, seat, and another seat, but really the pronunciation is the same. The no, sorry, the you write you write different, but when you listen this word also uh, it sounds very similar, but the
Mm.
reality is that is different.
Mm. Yeah, like the term that we use for them is minimal pairs. Let me just
Yes.
write that in the chat. I don't know a specific website, but if you Google or look on
We have
YouTube,
name. Okay.
you will find 100,000 different ways to practice.
Bella, that sounds to me as like a dictionary or a synonym. Minimal parts is like a synonymous or what?
Minimal pairs are like, I think like the example that Carla gave, which is like sit and seat, they're like very similar, but they have a different sound. Or like,
Okay.
um, yeah, like for example, like beach and bitch, that
Mhm.
kind of like, oh,
Okay.
they sound the same. Yeah. So thank you very much everyone for coming, and have a lovely week. I'll see you soon.